Father Chrysostomos, representing Archbishop Nikitas of Thyatira and Great Britain, Reverend Fathers, Mr. Athanasios Rizos, Consul General from the Greek Embassy, distinguished academics, members and friends. Nice to see a pretty much packed house tonight. Welcome to the Association of Constantinopolitan Greeks in the UK's first event at the Hellenic Centre. We're using this for the first time. Sorry if my voice is a bit croaky. As you will see from the panel table here, the unfortunate news is that Professor Chrysos is not with us this evening due to ill health. We wish him well and a speedy recovery. We are much honoured and blessed to have the esteemed Byzantinist Dr. Dionysios Stathakopoulos step in and present Dr. Chrysos' presentation. Before I hand you over to Katerina, however, having seen so many new faces tonight, I would like to take the opportunity and introduce ourselves. We are the Association of Constantinopolitan Greeks in the UK, or ACGUK for short. I am Panos Anagностόπουλος, Chairman of the Board of Directors, which is made up of 5 members. Katerina Krimichou is our Secretary General and is acting as moderator today. Maria Christidou is our Treasurer. George Kalamaris at the door of the back, an esteemed member. And last and not least, Fivo Siliadou, the man at the door. ACG UK was created last November from 22 founder members, the majority of whom are born and bred Constantinopolitans. By the way, by the end of tonight's session, I expect you all to be able to pronounce Constantinople, Constantinopolitans before I can say Jack Robinson. So going back to us, what is our purpose in life? ACG UK's key purpose, is the preservation and dissemination of the historical and cultural heritage of the Greek Orthodox community of Constantinople, centered around our ecumenical patriarchate, as well as the preservation, development, and promotion of the customs, traditions, arts and letters of the Constantinopolitan Greeks. As a society, we are under the aegis of the Ecumenical Federation of Constantinopolitans based in Athens. There are similar societies like ours in Germany, Switzerland, US, and quite a number in Greece. Jointly, all these societies and us, we support the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople in its global mission for peace, mutual understanding, protection of the environment, and humanity. We support, defend, and promote human rights, and in particular the rights of the Constantinopolitan Greeks. By the way, when I talk about Constantinopolitan Greeks, it goes without saying that I include the Greeks of the islands, on the islands of Imbros and Tenedos. We also promote the recognition of the Constantinopolitan Greeks in the diaspora, together with those living in Constantinople, as beneficiaries and executors of the cultural wealth of the Greek communities and foundations in Constantinople. We have recently grown to 51 members and are always looking for new talent. You do not necessarily have to have been born a Constantinopolitan Greek to become a member of our association. We look for people who share our key purpose mentioned above, the preservation and dissemination of the historical and cultural heritage, which is what we call the Constantinopolitan conscience, or in Greek, η πολιτική συνείδηση. For those of Greek origin amongst you in the audience, most of you, statistically, have some Romnios or Rum, Dr. Vasiliadis will explain these words, blood running through your veins. That's because quite likely one or other or both of your grandparent or great-grandparent would have originated from Asia Minor before they were displaced as a result of the unfortunate population exchange of 1923. So technically, you qualify to join us. It does not matter if Greek is not your first language. We do not distinguish or discriminate. All our communications are bilingual, and events can be either or both in either or both languages. As it happens, tonight's event is in English, and if there is a Greek speech, the English translation will be shown on the projector. We do various events during the year: the traditional cutting of the New Year cake, a Christmas carnival event, as well as events like this one of more informative and cultured nature. We're also thinking of a musical event next year, a trip to Constantinople, and many others. Please check our website or leave us your email address to make sure you get updated. By the way, our next event is the Christmas event, Christmas party at the Hilton Wembley on Saturday, 23rd November. So, save the date. Consequently, if any one of you would like to join us, please see one of us or email us detailing your name, address, telephone number, and the £25 subscription fee. Without much further ado, I would like to hand over to our moderator, Katerina. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Panos. Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'll try to speak loud. So just to give you a brief outline of our program this evening, we'll have two presentations by our professors who are present with us today. Byzantium, the Empire of Constantinople, that was prepared by Dr. Chrysos, but unfortunately he couldn't join us. So this is presented kindly by Dr. Stathakopoulos. Then we have the Constantinopolitans in the post-Byzantine period, and that's presented by Dr. Vasiliadis himself. Then we will have a panel discussion open to our two guest speakers, and I will introduce you properly after this. And then we were going to open to you, to our audience, and feel free to ask questions to all of our panelists for today. So please, I want to welcome, and thank you all for being present, but I want to welcome Dr. Dionysios Stathakopoulos, Senior Lecturer in Byzantine Studies, King's College. As I said, Dr. Evanggelos Χρυσός couldn't join us, but I felt it was appropriate to have his picture here. He is in spirit, and he emailed me this morning. We have Dr. George Vasiliadis, Research Associate, Hellenic Institute. And then we have our two guest speakers, Prεσβύτερος Σάββας Βασιλειάδης, and he's our Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of Θυατείρα in Great Britain. And Ms. Niki Beales, President of the Greek Orthodox Community of Milton Keynes and the Chapel of Panagia of Lacherna. So please, a big thank you to all our panelists. And with that said, I'll hand over to Dr. Vasiliadis, actually Dr. Stathakopoulos.
Do you want me to speak from here or should I go there?
No, you can, I'll just give you this.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I am not Professor Chrysos. Those of you who know him, I think we don't even look very much alike, but I hope I'll do a good job at least presenting his text. It is a great pleasure to be here again in this so pleasant and so Hellenic place for an evening dedicated to Constantinople and the Constantinopolitans. Imitating John Kennedy and his famous address to the citizens of Berlin with the phrase, Ich bin ein Berliner, I will not surprise you as a Greek Byzantinist if I admit that since my childhood, in heart and in mind, I have been a Constantinopolitis, although I was born in the second city of the empire, in Thessaloniki. The name Byzantium, as the technical label for the Byzantine Empire, goes back to Hieronymus Wolff, a German philologist who in the 16th century was the first to publish in print the works of some Byzantine historians in the collection of Byzantine historical sources under the name Corpus Historiae Byzantinae. Wolff is considered as the father of Byzantine studies, since he was indeed the first scholar in the post-medieval period to study Greek historical sources, referring to Byzantium as a potentially autonomous scholarly discipline. Actually, Wolff was a classical philologist who studied and published mainly texts of the classical period, and as many of his peers, he did not have much sympathy for the Byzantines. he was indeed sharing an attitude widespread in Western Europe that was full of prejudices against the Greek Orthodox world. It is therefore quite interesting to see why this German classicist undertook the task of publishing Byzantine historical texts of the later period. He did so on demand of his employer, the renowned industrialist and financier Johann Jakob Fugger in Augsburg. Wolf was employed by Fugger as his librarian and was asked by him to collect information about the Byzantines and their causes because he knew that they had fought for centuries against the Ottoman Turks in an ultimately unsuccessful effort to push them back to Anatolia. Let me remind you here that in 1529, the Ottoman Turks, led by the Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, had attempted their first siege of Vienna in Austria. This serious situation terrified the Germans, especially the Bavarians, who lived under the fear of an imminent threat that Germany might be the next victim of Turkish greed. This, in other words, the study of Byzantine history as a discipline, was born due to the Turkish threat of conquering the whole of Europe. Let us tackle for a moment the word Byzantine and its use in order to put aside a widespread misunderstanding. The word Byzantine, Byzantinos, does not apply merely to the historical memory of Byzantium, the old Greek colony on the Bosporus, in the place where Constantine founded his royal city when he became sole emperor, monarch of the Roman Empire in 324 AD. Quite early in Byzantine history, at the latest from the 6th century onwards, writers such as the ecclesiastical historian Evagrios and the hagiographer Cyril of Scythopolis applied the name Byzantium for the royal city itself, alternately to its own official name, Constantinople. Furthermore, we find the name Byzantine, in Greek Byzantinos and more often Byzantios, as the official ethnic name for the citizens of the imperial city, much more often than the name Constantinopolitis. Therefore, we conclude that already in the Byzantine period, the word Byzantine was in use as a generic name for everything relating to Constantinople, its people, as well as its physical location, and by extension, for all things and matters referring to the Eastern Roman Empire. In this sense, several historiographers and chroniclers favored as a title of the work the term Byzantiaka, or Historia Byzantiakia. Although the content of their works covered not solely the history of the city, but the history of the Eastern Roman Empire in general. Similarly, for example, Theodore Studhitis, the erudite monk in the 9th century, preferred the name Byzantis, whereas in the 14th century, the scholar and statesman Theodore Metochitis, in his panegyric work to praise the city under the semantic title Byzantios, coined a new word for the Byzantine Empire, the word Kinopolitia, Commonwealth, which echoes the ecumenical dimensions and aspirations of the empire. Thus, the word Byzantine was, and still is, a throughout legitimate name for the empire of the Bosporus and whatever is related to it. You may consider this introductory reference to the word Byzantine as superfluous. However, I thought that it is necessary to offer it as a necessary response to voices from circles of intellectuals in today's Greece and elsewhere who tend to understand the term Byzantine as a supposedly malicious expression of those persons in the West who are supposed to deliberately try to diminish and despise the glory of the Byzantine Empire by confining it to the classical, little, and insignificant colony of the Megarians. Let me say it in clear words. the term Byzantium and the adjective Byzantine is a generic term applied in the international discipline of Byzantine studies and is free from any such malicious, negative attitude towards the Byzantine state and its culture. Of course, on the other hand, there is no doubt that in the past and occasionally even today, prejudices were voiced against Byzantium. Some of them are rooted in the old confrontation between the Roman Catholic and the Orthodox churches, when, in the Middle Ages, the Byzantines refused to accept the doctrine of universal primacy of the Pope of Rome. In addition, the West refused to accept Constantinople's self-perception as the new Rome, that is, as the legitimate successor of Rome as the seat of imperial power. For this reason, people in the West after the 7th century refused to regard the Byzantine emperors and their constituency as Romans and referred to them as Greeks, Greki. Several influential authors, among them the renowned scholar Thomas Aquinas, wrote polemical treatises under the title Contra Errores Graecorum, against the errors of the Greeks. This critique was advanced and accompanied by an amounting and accumulating attitude of hatred to everything Byzantine, everything Greek, and this animosity paved the road to the ultimate crime, the sack of Constantinople by the united forces of the West under the cross of the Fourth Crusade in 1204, and the subjugation of the whole Greek East to Latin domination. On the other hand, it deserves to be underlined that the term Byzantine was never used by the medieval enemies of the empire as a weapon of hatred against it. The study of the relevant material leads to the paradoxical conclusion that some scholars of Byzantium of our time dispute the Greek character of Byzantium, or, more correctly, the continuity of its culture and spirit in modern Greece, while the Latin sources of the Middle Ages emphasize without reservation the Greekness of the empire, which occasionally is labeled by them as Grecia. In the years of the Enlightenment, the Byzantine society and its culture were rebuked as superstitious and irrational, notorious for murders taking place in the palace. Byzantium was perceived as a world of crime, dishonesty, and silliness. As you certainly know, it was Edward Gibbon, the famous British historian of the late 18th century, who played a decisive role in forming a very negative outlook of Byzantium here in England, and this produced a trend in European historiography. Even today, one can find this attitude in some places, especially in the Anglo-Saxon tradition. On this line, a new word was coined, Byzantinism, to describe everything despicable and detestable that one could imagine as imitating the negative characteristics of Byzantium, real and imagined. This world had such a literary success that it penetrated all expressions of public life in many European languages. Especially journalists here in England favored this word in order to criticize what they disliked in their own political life. No wonder that this word entered in the 19th century the Greek language too, to similarly express in the form of an ideology a modern Greek attitude of lack of appreciation and negation of the Byzantine heritage in favor of the classical past. It was Konstantinos Kavafis, the poet of Alexandria with Constantinopolitan roots, who first dared to give a positive meaning to the word Byzantinism and spoke of our glorious Byzantinism, ο ένδοξός μας Βυζαντινισμός. By shifting the center of gravity of the empire to the east through the foundation of Constantinople as the emperor's city, as sedes imperii, Constantine the Great created the conditions for the prospect of a new Greco-Roman political formation. It was his city, Constantinople, the new Rome, that produced a new identity of its citizens. The fast expansion of the city in just a few decades in the 4th century demonstrates that Constantine's decision was an immense and unexpected success. Soon thereafter, and throughout the medieval era, this city at the Bosporus established itself as the only real capital city in the whole world. Constantine's decision proved to be so genius that it changed the course of history. I should remind you that the late antique period was a period of continuous decline of the urban structures of the Roman world, with most of the cities being in demographic and economic decline. Contrary to this general decline, Constantinople quickly gained huge vigor, rose rapidly in population and economic growth, and within a few decades it became unquestionably the center of the empire on its own right. This development encouraged the citizens in the provinces to leave their home and move to the city, calculating that there they would be daily provided by the city with bread, enjoy security behind its strong walls, and find jobs in its thriving economy. In addition, they would enjoy the architectural charm of the new streets and squares, the fora. They would participate in the joyful events of the city, at the hippodrome, religious celebrations in the beautiful churches, especially in the Hagia Sophia, and ritual processions led by the emperor himself, his family, and his colorful entourage. The magnificent and enchanting city, as the common home of the Romans, contained the central Imperial Palace, which was a whole city-state, and all the other representative buildings of the imperial order. Not only public buildings of high aesthetic value and the headquarters of the administrative machinery that were all connected to the Holy Palace, the Sacrum Palatium, and its functions. Apart from the palace and the plethora of other palaces and villas inside and outside the city walls, there was also an impressive network of hundreds of church foundations, churches and monasteries as princely donations were the numerous Orthodox, mainly Greek-speaking clergymen. From the 11th century onwards, we could find in the city Latin clergymen in their own Roman Catholic churches. In addition, you could hear the chants in synagogues in some areas restricted to the Jews. You could even hear the regular prayers of imams in mosques, something that surprised Christian visitors from the West. In a lyrical way, the city was praised as the navel of the earth and the eye of the world. Ομφαλός της γης και οφθαλμός της οικουμένης. On entering the cosmopolis, the visitor was stunned by the thousands of inhabitants, each with his diversity, taking in many different languages, as John Tsedgis describes it emphatically in the 12th century. The visitor was impressed by the variety of cultures and aesthetics, the particularity of passers-by, their clothes, their voices, and their gestures. Looking more attentively, the visitor would admire the city's administration, the way it was dealing with its everyday problems, such as matters of urban planning, accommodation of residents and visitors, issues with water supply, sanitation, or feeding the market with food from the countryside. With all this in mind, one would admit that Constantinople was the largest city on earth. It was perceived as a miracle, exciting for its visitors, but also for those who may have never visited but just dreamed to visit it. It was the city of their imagination, from reading descriptions and tales of others, a Constantinople imaginaire, an imaginary Constantinople. Justinian's ecclesiastical endowment the incomparable church of St Sophia was from its original conception designed to overshadow in size and beauty any other building in the world, and as you know, it was built to remain over the centuries as the absolute material and symbolic focus of the Christian empire. And if I may add here, let's just imagine that this gigantic church that still survives today was built in just 5 years. It was to emerge as the architectural model for the whole world. It functioned as the ultimate model of liturgical life in the Orthodox Church through the centuries, and at the same time, it established itself as the tangible symbolic image not only of Christianity, but of the whole monotheistic world. In all emerging states in the north and west, but also in the east, the great cathedrals were dedicated to St. Sophia, reflecting this reality again and again. In 20 capitals or other cities in this state, you find churches dedicated to Hagia Sophia. The Russian travelers admired Constantinople and its buildings and recorded it in their reports. It's an undoubtable evidence of the charm and attraction that the city exercised all over the world. The envoy of Prince Vladimir informed his ruler on his return from the city in 987, I quote, "The Greeks took us to their places of worship, and we didn't know if we were in heaven or on earth. For there is no other place on earth so grand and beautiful, and is beyond our ability to describe it. We only know that God lives there between humans, and their services are brighter than in any other nation. We can never forget this beauty." End of quote. The unique size scales of quantity that I mentioned about Constantinople were in full harmony with the highest quality that shaped the aesthetic perfection of this model city. Corresponding to this quality was what today we call quality of life in the city. Indisputable proof of the appreciation of life in the city are various manifestations of love and praise of the Constantinopolitans, the Byzantines, as they did not hesitate to call themselves, for their own city. There is no doubt that they were happy with their city. They loved it, as you continue to do, although many of you and your families were forced to leave it under unpleasant conditions. We have evidence to prove that the Byzantines were unhappy with the prospect of having to move away from the city for any reason, even temporarily, for example, on a diplomatic mission. There is no doubt that the Constantinopolitans were very pleased with their city. As I said, they loved it, and their attitude was genuine and honest, though occasionally it was expressed in rhetorical and all too colorful and poetic fashion. This attitude explains the deviation of the Fourth Crusade and the sack of the city, and it explains also the άλωσης, the final sack by the Ottomans in 1453. We happen to know from Arab sources that the Muslims of the East already in the 7th century had claimed as a sacred goal to crown their conquest of the Christian world with the conquest of Constantinople. Political ambitions intertwined with religious beliefs in company with comments voiced by Muslim lawmakers led gradually to the formulation of a Muslim doctrine that remained unchanged over the centuries and which served Mehmed the Conqueror to legitimize the sack of the city as the ultimate religious and political goal. Thus, by taking Constantinople, Mehmed proved to the eyes of the Muslims of the world that he was the ruler who was destined to fulfill the old command. Practical extension of this belief was that the Ottomans claimed the glorious past of the city and appropriated its symbols in order to fit into the broader frame of the world history as legal heirs of the city. In the years of gradual decline after the sack of 1204 by the Crusades, Constantinople lost much of its former radiation. The Imperial Palace was abandoned for a much smaller Imperial Palace in the northwestern area of Lacherna. Many other monumental buildings had collapsed. The population and the economy shrank dramatically due to the booming economy of the Venetian and Genoese colonies that had taken in their hands the city's commerce. However, the political role of Constantinople as the absolute center of Byzantium remained unchanged, although it was surviving in a more symbolic form. Thus, it was a long and arduous process of decline until the 15th century and the fall to the Ottomans in 1453 that the empire was getting more and more the size and shape of a city-state, giving a new meaning in the phrase, the Empire of Constantinople. Hence, and in the form of an epilogue, I conclude with the observation that more than any other name, the Byzantine Empire most eloquent name is Empire of Constantinople. Thank you.
We'll just take 2 minutes to change the presentations and we're back.
Thank you, Dionysius. I'm going to now provide a sort of epilogue to Professor Chrysos's paper in the form of a brief history of the Greeks of Constantinople in the post-Byzantine period. There are a number of terms that are used to refer to the Greek-speaking, Greek Orthodox inhabitants of Constantinople, as well as to others who identified culturally with them, and they're up there. Constantinopolites, Polites, Romii, Rum in Turkish. I'm going to refer to them as Greeks, just to be simple. On the eve of the Ottoman conquest, the population of Constantinople numbered about 50,000. This was a far cry from its height of 800,000 in the late 12th century, when it was the largest and richest city in Europe and quite possibly the world. Even at 50,000, Constantinople was still larger than contemporary London, however. Keep that in mind. Its inhabitants were overwhelmingly Greek in language, religion, and culture, apart from comparatively small Venetian and Jewish communities. A few thousand Greeks also lived in the Genoese colony of Galata, also known as Pera, which faced Constantinople on the opposite shore of the Golden Horn. So that's Galata up there at the top, and then this is the city of Constantinople itself, that's the Golden Horn. In March 1453, as the Ottoman army encircled the Byzantine capital, only about 5,000 of its inhabitants were capable of taking part in the defense of the city by land and sea. They were supported by around 2,000 Venetians and Genoese. By contrast, the Ottoman army and navy under Sultan Mehmed II numbered somewhere between 80 and 100,000, possibly more. The assault began on the 6th of April, and somehow the doomed city held out until the 29th of May, 1453. Stephen Runciman's book, The Fall of Constantinople, which many of you will be familiar with, published in 1965, still remains the most readable account of this epic struggle. In the slaughter that followed the taking of the city, most of the defenders were killed, including Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos, and an unknown number of non-combatants, perhaps as many as 10,000. Almost all of the surviving men, women, and children, rich and poor alike, were enslaved. In accordance with custom, the Sultan was allotted 1/5 of all slaves taken, including most of the women and children of noble origin. The Sultan ordered that the ordinary people who came into his possession this way, the sailors, craftsmen, merchants, gardeners, priests, monks, nuns, etc., should be allowed to stay in the city of Constantinople, which he intended to make his capital. The women and children of noble origin were taken into his harem, where the boys were forcibly converted to Islam and trained as courtiers, administrators, and soldiers. Of the thousands of Constantinopolitans who remained enslaved, a fraction were able to buy their freedom, either immediately or over the course of months and years. The remainder disappeared into the slave markets of the East. In accordance with the terms of a treaty concluded on the 1st of June 1453, so a few days after the fall, the Genoese colony of Galata surrendered to the Ottomans and became part of the Sultan's realm. Its inhabitants, many of whom were Greek, were automatically transformed into tax-paying subjects of the Sultan. This is the original text of the Galata Treaty of 1453. You will notice that under the Sultan's tugra or monogram, the text is written in Greek. The original is in the British Museum. This is because Greek was one of the official languages of the Ottoman administration. By the end of 1453, perhaps as many as 10,000 Greeks remained in Constantinople and Galata. We don't know the exact number for sure, and we probably never will. However, a unique document has survived, which sheds light on the population of Constantinople 2.5 years after the conquest. This is the Ottoman census of the city taken in December 1455. This amazing document was first published in 2012, so very recently. Before then it was unknown. Sadly, it is incomplete. Although several districts of the city are missing, it provides a vivid glimpse into the reality of life in Constantinople at the end of 1455. The picture is not a rosy one. Vast swathes of the devastated city lie empty and abandoned. In the immediate aftermath of the conquest, Sultan Mehmed had ordered Muslims, Greeks, Jews, and Armenians from different parts of his empire to be transferred to his new capital. The 1455 census reveals that the first wave of Muslim settlers who had been offered free property by the Sultan had already left in droves. The Jewish settlers seem to have been more resilient. Many are listed in quarters which retained a Jewish presence well into the 20th century, like Balat. Galata was included in the census. There, Greeks made up the majority of the population, alongside its Genoese, Armenian, and Jewish inhabitants. This is interesting because over the course of the ensuing 4 centuries, Galata and its outer suburb Pera, known to the Greeks as Stavrodromi, the crossroads, would become home to the largest concentration of Greeks in Constantinople. The surviving sections of the 1455 census suggest that almost 3 years after the fall of the city, the majority of its inhabitants were Greek. Many of them will have been native Constantinopolitans who were enslaved in May 1453 and who were then allowed by the Sultan to remain in the conquered city or who managed to buy back their freedom. Some will have been Greeks from other regions brought to the city by Mehmet as part of his resettlement scheme. In the end, it took almost 3 decades for the repopulation of Constantinople to be completed and for Muslim Turks to begin to outnumber the Greeks, Jews, and Armenians who also lived there. By the time of Mehmet's death in 1481, the population of the city is thought to have risen as high as 70,000, of which the majority were by now Muslim Turks. By contrast, only Paris, Naples, Milan, and Venice were larger at this time. Apart from the fact that Greek remained the mother tongue of the city's largest non-Muslim minority and a principal language of the Ottoman administration, the memory of Byzantium lived on in other forms. The most important was the presence of the Greek Orthodox Church, thanks to the re-establishment of the Patriarchate of Constantinople by Sultan Mehmet, conqueror. In 1454, the monk Gennadios was confirmed by the Sultan as the successor to the vacant patriarchal throne in order to provide spiritual leadership and a rallying point for his Greek subjects, that is, the Sultan's Greek subjects. Now that the 200-year reign of the λλογος dynasty had come to an end, the Patriarchate of Constantinople filled the void, with its quasi-imperial symbolism and ceremonial. Over the course of the next 250 years, the Patriarchate would gradually reestablish its ecclesiastical networks and come to be recognized as the de facto leadership of the entire Greek Orthodox population of the Ottoman Empire. Thanks to the presence of the Patriarchate, the Greeks of Constantinople came to play a leading role in the history of the Greek world, both inside and beyond the borders of the Ottoman Empire. By 1600, the Patriarchate was established at its present seat in the Fanar, which derives its name from a nearby fanari or lighthouse. As you can see from the photos, the Patriarchate is relatively modest when compared to the Vatican or Lambeth Palace. Over the course of the 16th and 17th centuries, the city of Constantinople continued to grow and to benefit from long periods of peace and prosperity. By the year 1700, its population is thought to have numbered between 300 and 400,000, placing it in a similar category to Naples, London, and Paris, which were then the largest cities in Europe. It was around this time that the Phanariots, Greek Orthodox merchants who lived near the Patriarchate and the Phanar, take center stage. In addition to developing extensive trading networks throughout the Ottoman Empire and Central Europe, the Phanariots were also known for their language skills and their familiarity with European culture and society. They increased their prestige and influence by securing posts within the secular hierarchy of the Patriarchate, often acting as middlemen in its relations with Ottoman officials. At the end of the 17th century, the Ottomans decided to co-opt the multi-talented Phanariots into their own service as high-ranking state translators and negotiators, and as governors of the rich semi-autonomous provinces of Moldavia and Wallachia, which now make up most of Romania. Although holding high office in the Ottoman Empire was fraught with danger, and many Phanariots were executed for alleged disloyalty, there was still a great deal of competition for the posts. Phanariot women were amongst the first in the wider Greek world to gain access to education. Many were accomplished linguists, and some published poetry and plays. The Phanariot ascendancy, one of the most notable periods in the history of the Greek community of Constantinople, lasted for about 150 years. It came crashing to an end with the outbreak of the Greek War of Independence in March 1821, when dozens of Phanariot officials and their associates were scapegoated and publicly executed as a warning to the insurgent Greek populations in the provinces of the Ottoman Empire. Many Phanariots fled to Russia, Austria, and Western Europe. Some, such as Michael Soutsos, who you see here, eventually made their way to Greece, where they served the newly independent country as administrators, diplomats, soldiers, and educators. The most prominent victim of the terror which gripped Constantinople in the aftermath of the outbreak of the Greek War of Independence was the elderly Patriarch Gregorios V. Despite the fact that he had vociferously condemned the uprising from the very outset and excommunicated its leaders, on Easter Sunday 1821, Gregorios was led from the Patriarchate and hanged from its main gate. Clearly, the Ottoman government viewed the Greek uprising as unforgivable treachery on the part of a favored subject people, and the backlash was correspondingly harsh. Suffice it to say that it took the Greek community of Constantinople about 2 decades to recover from the repercussions of the Greek War of Independence. The amazing fact of the matter is that by the end of the 1850s, the Greeks of Constantinople had recovered their preeminent position amongst the Ottoman Empire's minorities. This renaissance was due to a combination of factors. First and foremost, industrious Greeks were omnipresent in the Constantinopolitan market as porters, construction workers, fishermen, craftsmen, shopkeepers. They were also involved in cottage industry and manufacturing, in international trade, and at every level of the Ottoman banking system centered in the district of Galata. The Tanzimat, or Ottoman Reform Movement, which proclaimed the equality of all Ottoman subjects and introduced European-style governance into the empire, was also crucial, as was immigration from the Greek world, which constantly replenished the community's numbers. Thanks to their hard work and resolve, the Greeks of Constantinople would enjoy their finest hour during the second half of the 19th century. The vast majority were what we would now describe as working class, but there was also a substantial middle class and a small but powerful group of self-made millionaires, chiefly bankers and industrialists. The rich Greek families of Constantinople generously supported their community, funding the construction of hospitals, churches, and schools, and financing the activity of educational and philanthropic associations. It is important to remember that until the end of the empire, all Ottoman minorities had to fund and organize their own educational and communal institutions. Government funding was non-existent. Here are a few examples of these benefactions. The Greek hospital at Baloukli, just outside the land walls, which you can see at the bottom. It's that big complex up there with all the red roofs. Many churches were built during the Tanzimat period. This is the church of Konstantinos Kaeleni in Pera, Stavrodromi, one of the first churches to be built with a dome since the fall of Constantinople. Another church in the Asian suburb of Kadikoy or Hakidon, a bit later. The new buildings of the Megalitou Yenuskoli and the Phanar, which existed probably from the late Byzantine period, but was certainly re-established after 1454 again. The girls' school, the Zapion in Stavrodromi. The Zografion, which was the boys' school in Stavrodromi. The theological school of Halki, to the bottom right, on the top of the green hill. The Greek commercial school of Halki, which now the buildings were taken over by the Turkish Navy in the early 20th century. Halki is just a short ferry ride from Constantinople. It's considered a suburb of Constantinople, as are the other Prince's Islands. The Greek philological Syllogos of Constantinople, known as the Ministry of Education of the Ottoman Greeks because of its activity in education, founding and funding schools throughout the entire 19th and early 20th century. It would take hours to list the learned Greek men and women of Constantinople who made a name for themselves in this period: educators, physicians, writers, and artists. I will refer to just two. Kalliope Kekagia was one of the most prominent Greek women educators of the 19th century and the first headmistress of the Zapion Parthenogogion School for Girls. Alexandros Karatheodori, an outstanding example of the many Greeks who entered the Ottoman civil service, forming a sort of neo-Phanariot elite. He was also one of a handful of Constantinopolitan Greeks to be granted the prestigious Ottoman title of Pasha. So, it is important to remember that until the end of the 19th century, there were more Greeks in Constantinople than in Athens and Piraeus combined. Thanks to the presence of the Patriarchate, the city was still viewed by many as the symbolic capital of the Greek world. Although the rise of nationalism had pitted Greeks against Turks since the 1820s, it was only at the very end of the 19th century that the Greeks of Constantinople once again found themselves caught in the middle, following the outbreak of the Greco-Turkish War of 1897. The situation went from bad to worse with the rise of the Young Turks, the two Balkan Wars, and World War I, in which the Ottoman Empire allied itself with Germany. When Constantinople was occupied by the victorious British and French forces in 1918, there were around 300,000 Greeks in the city. The ensuing Greco-Turkish War of 1919 to 22 therefore played itself out while the Greek population of Constantinople was at its historic height, with thousands of refugees streaming into the city from war-torn Asia Minor. The state of mind of the Constantinopolitan Greeks, as news spread of the defeat of the Greek army in Asia Minor, the fire of Smyrna, and the uprooting of hundreds of thousands of Anatolian Greeks, can well be imagined. As it turned out, the rights of the Greek community of Constantinople were enshrined in the Treaty of Lausanne, concluded in July 1923, which brought an end to the Greco-Turkish conflict and regulated the exchange of population between the two nations. Although over 100,000 Greeks left Constantinople at this time, in accordance with the Lausanne Treaty, the so-called non-exchangeable or established Greeks, those who were of Ottoman nationality and who had been living in the city since 1918, were allowed to remain. So were 25,000 Greeks who held Hellenic nationality, i.e. were Greek citizens, many of whom had been born in the city or lived there for decades. Between 1927 and 1934, a census of the non-exchangeable Greeks of Constantinople was conducted under the auspices of the League of Nations. This amazing document still survives. It preserves the names and personal details of over 73,000 individuals together with their photos. So we can actually come into direct contact with these people. During the 1930s and 40s, the Turkish government passed discriminatory legislation which obliged many Constantinopolitan Greeks to emigrate and which adversely affected the community's schools and other institutions. World War II, during which Turkey remained neutral, was a particularly dark period. The community, nevertheless, displayed an astonishing resilience, and during the late 1940s and early 1950s, it enjoyed a social and cultural flowering, which has been well described by Kostas Stamatopoulos in his book I Τελευταία Αναλαμπή, The Final Afterglow. Then came the vicious state-sponsored anti-Greek riots of September 1955 and the mass expulsions of Greeks with Hellenic nationality in 1964. Most of the Greeks who were expelled had been born in Constantinople, and many had intermarried with Greeks of Turkish nationality. In the end, tens of thousands left. The events of 1955 and the 1960s were further compounded by the political and economic instability which ravaged Turkey from the early 1970s until the mid-1980s. It was during that period that the Greek population of Constantinople dropped to below 10,000 for the first time since the fall of Constantinople. The Tarlabashi demolitions, euphemistically described as urban renewal, which began on the significant date of the 29th of May, 1986, and which have continued sporadically since then, decimated the predominantly Greek district centered around this important para-thoroughfare. In recent years, there have been some positive developments. In particular, the restoration of private and communal properties arbitrarily confiscated in the 1930s and the 1970s, between the 30s and the 1970s. The possible reopening of the Theological School of Halki, closed down by the Turkish government in 1971 and essential to the future of the Patriarchate, has also been discussed. Many injustices remain, including the ownership of 3 historic Greek Orthodox churches in Galata, usurped by a breakaway sect of the Orthodox Church in the 1920s and still under occupation by the descendants of its founder. Within living memory, the city of Istanbul has been home to 48 Greek Orthodox parishes or local communities, each with its own institutions, including churches, cemeteries, schools, cultural associations, etc. The immovable property, which belongs to the Greek community of Constantinople, includes some of the most valuable real estate in 21st century Istanbul, with the Church of the Holy Trinity, which you can see right there, and the Zapion School next to it, just off Taksim Square, that's the corner of Taksim Square there, being prime examples. I will end with some population statistics. Many of these are estimates because we don't have accurate figures. The first proper census of Turkey was taken in 1927. That's why we have exact figures for that period and then on. And for the Greek community, we don't have exact figures, apart from the census figures which relate to the language people speak or their nationality. The numbers speak for themselves. But the statistics also hint at the size of the global diaspora of Constantinopolitan Greeks. How many people living in Greece, Europe, the Americas, Africa, and Australasia are of Constantinopolitan Greek heritage? There have to be tens of thousands, probably more. Thank you.
So much, both of you. Thank you. So with that said, we're going to move to our panel discussion. This will be open to our 2 guest speakers now. The Constantinopolitans today is the topic, and we have 3 questions for each. Now, before we start, do you want to have a break, a short break? Because I'm conscious of time as well. Or can we carry on?
The temperature is okay? Cold.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So all right. So we'll carry on, and then we'll have our break, and hopefully some discussion in the bar or near the bar area. Okay. So our first guest speaker, right, and the 3 questions that I have to ask are Father Savvas. What is the key role of the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople as you witness it today? in the preservation of the Greek Orthodox community of Istanbul. And just to say, Father Savvas will speak in Greek, so for this reason we have the text in English as well.
Καταρχάς, να ζητήσω συγγνώμη, μιλάω στα ελληνικά, αλλά είναι η μητρική μου γλώσσα και δεν θα μπορούσα να εκφραστώ όσο καλά θα ήθελα στα αγγλικά για αυτά που θέλω να πω. Χωρίς να χρειαστεί να επεκταθώ σε ιστορικά γεγονότα, τα οποία είναι λίγο πολύ σε όλους μας γνωστά, θα σημειώσω και θα εξάρω το βασικό διάβλο επιρροής και θεσμικής επαφής του Οικουμενικού Πατριαρχείου και του ελληνικού στοιχείου της Κωνσταντινουπόλεως. Ανέκαθεν η σταθερότερη πόλη εξουσίας στην περιοχή από τα χρόνια της εμφάνισης και εγκαθίδρυσης της Ανατολικής Ρωμαϊκής Αυτοκρατορίας, με την ευρεία έννοια και έναν χαρακτήρα διαμορφούμενο βάσει των εκάστοτε κοινωνικοπολιτικών ζυμώσεων, ήταν μετά συνήθως από τον Αυτοκράτορα η Εκκλησία της Κωνσταντινουπόλεως, η Σύγκλιτος, η Κωνσταντινουπολίτικη αριστοκρατία, η Μέση και ο λαός. Και λέω συνήθως μετά τον Αυτοκράτορα, καθώς ιστορικά απεδείχθη πως ο μόνος θεσμός που επηρέασε πλειστάκι στο παλάτι ιστορικά, πολιτικά και κοινωνικά, αλλά και επιβίωσε μέχρι σήμερα, είναι η Εκκλησία. Αρκεί να αναλογιστεί κανείς πως στην Τέταρτη Οικουμενική Σύνοδο στη Χαλκιδόνα το 451 τα αξιώματα της Εκκλησίας της Κωνσταντινουπόλεως αναφέρονται ως θεσμοί που οργανώνουν το Πατριαρχείο κατά το πρότυπο του αριστοκρατικού παλατιού, του αυτοκρατορικού παλατιού. Μέχρι και τον 15ο αιώνα, οι αξιωματούχοι του Πατριαρχείου και δύο πατριάρχες, που από τον 6ο αιώνα αποκαλείται Οικουμενικός, ως ο ηθήνων νους για την Ένωση των Εκκλησιών, αποτελούσαν τον κύριο διαμορφωτή της πολιτικής ζωής τόσο στο εσωτερικό όσο και στην εξωτερική πολιτική. Όμως, καθώς τα συμφέροντα Εκκλησίας και Πολιτείας δεν ταυτίζονταν πάντα, υπήρχαν και συγκρούσεις. Την εποχή της Αλώσεως, οι πολιτικοί άρχοντες αναζητούσαν συνεργασίες με τις χώρες της Δύσης, προκειμένου να εξασφαλίσουν συμμάχους απέναντι στον Οθωμανικό επεκτατισμό. Από την άλλη μεριά, το Πατριαρχείο και η Εκκλησία στο σύνολό της αναζητούσε μια καλύτερη εσωτερική συνοχή, ενδυνάμωση της επικράτειας και προώθηση της ανασύστασης της αυτοκρατορίας. Η τάση της πολιτείας προς τη Δύση άφηνε ανοιχτά παράθυρα για την διείσδυση της Καθολικής Εκκλησίας, πράγμα το οποίο το Πατριαρχείο πολεμούσε. Η Εκκλησία ως μια ιστορική πραγματικότητα φάνηκε τελικά να ήταν η μόνη πολιτική προοπτική της εποχής. Και αυτό γιατί η τάση των πολιτικών να ενώσουν όπως την Καθολική με την Ορθόδοξη Εκκλησία, περιμένοντας βοήθεια από τη Δύση εναντίον των Οθωμανών, προκάλεσε καθυστερήσεις και φθορά στην ανασύσταση της αυτοκρατορίας και την εμψύχωση του λαού και επιτάχυνε την καταστροφή, η οποία βέβαια ήταν αναπόφευκτη ούτως ή άλλως. Αν αναλογιστούμε λοιπόν σήμερα πως το Πατριαρχείο επέζησε μετά την άλωση, τότε εύκολα συμπεραίνει κανείς πως στην πολιτική τουλάχιστον τοποθέτηση, μάλλον είχε δίκιο να ελπίζει μονάχα στην ανασύσταση και όχι σε έξωθεν βοήθεια. Παρόλη τη συρρίκνωση του Πατριαρχείου κατά τα χρόνια της τουρκοκρατίας, αλλά κυρίως μετά τη Μικρασιατική καταστροφή, παρατηρείται μια ισχυρή συνοχή, η οποία βέβαια, με τη χάρη του Θεού, απετέλεσε τη μαγιά για τη σημερινή ανάπτυξή του σε όλο τον κόσμο. Πέρα από τις δεκάδες κοινότητες εντός της Κωνσταντινουπόλεως και της Τουρκίας, εκατοντάδες απαριθμούνται σχεδόν σε όλες τις υπήρους. Καταρχάς, το Οικουμενικό Πατριαρχείο για την Κωνσταντινούπολη και τους Κωνσταντινουπολίτες είναι η έδρα της απανταχού Ορθοδοξίας, το στήριγμα, ο φορέας, το καράβι με το οποίο ταξιδεύει η πίστη μας στον χρόνο, γη Αγίων και Μαρτύρων που με το αίμα τους έχτισαν παγκοσμίως χριστοκεντρικές και εκκλησιοκεντρικές κοινότητες γεμάτες οικογένειες Ορθοδόξων. Κάθε Κωνσταντινουπολίτης έχει στο αίμα του κομμάτι αυτής της ιστορίας του Οικουμενικού μας Πατριαρχείου. Από την Αποστολική εποχή μέχρι τους διωγμούς, το σπρακτικό κλάμα των μανάδων που έχαναν τα παιδιά τους και την τελευταία πνοή του Γρηγορίου του Πέμπτου που εκτελέστηκε στην πόρτα του. Και αυτό το αίμα, όσο και αν χυθεί και όσες θυσίες και να αντέξει, πάντα θα φέρει στα ερυθρά του αιμοσφαίρια φως φαναρίου.
Thank you. As a Constantinopolitan living abroad in the era of globalization, what are your experiences or thoughts on our future as a community?
Οι κοινότητες των Κωνσταντινουπολιτών, σαν μια πανανθρώπινη κοινότητα, υποχρεούνται να κρατήσουν ζωντανά τα ορθόδοξα χριστιανικά ιδεώδη και την παράδοση. Είναι επιβεβλημένο μας καθήκον να μεταλαμπαδεύσουμε την αιματοβαμμένη αλλά και ένδοξή μας κληρονομιά στις επόμενες γενναίες, αλλά και να τιμήσουμε τους προγόνους μας και την πόλη. Όσο υπάρχει ιστορία να ρέει στο αίμα μας, τόσο θα υπάρχει και μέλλον στην Πατροαγή. Όσο υπάρχει συνοχή αλλά και στήριξη των Ελλήνων της πόλης από όλους μας, τόσο θα μπορούμε να ελπίζουμε στην πλήρη αποκατάσταση των δικαιωμάτων μας, στην ελεύθερη και απρόσκοπτη επαφή με το στοιχείο της πόλης, στη διατήρηση των παραδόσεων και στην αναζωπήρωση του θρησκευτικού συναισθήματος που με αγώνα διατηρεί ζωντανό και επαυξάνει το οικουμενικό μας πατριαρχείο από ιδρύσεώς του και στο επέκεινα. Η εποχή της παγκοσμιοποίησης έχει διτή επιρροή στο μέλλον μιας κοινότητας, ειδικά όταν η τελευταία δεν περιορίζεται γεωγραφικά στον τόπο δημιουργίας της, αλλά επεκτείνεται τόσο γεωπολιτικά όσο και ιστορικά και επηρεάζει και επηρεάζεται από το σύνολο των φαινομένων που διέπουν το κοινωνικό πλαίσιο στο οποίο αναπτύσσεται και δρά. Κατά την αναζήτηση των παρενεργειών της παγκοσμιοποίησης, από τη μία πλευρά εκμεεύεται η ανησυχία της ισοπαίδωσης της ιστορικής ταυτότητας των Κωνσταντινουπολιτών, είτε εντός Τουρκίας είτε εκτός, αλλά από την άλλη φαίνεται να ενισχύεται η ελευθερία και τα δικαιώματά τους. Γίνεται μάλλον ευρέως αντιληπτό πως ο σπόρος της ελληνοχριστιανικής παραδόσεως όχι μόνο κατάφερε να επιβιώσει τους αιώνες μετά από φωτιά και στάχτη, αλλά φαίνεται και να αναγεννάται, να ανθίζει και να δίνει νέο καρπό. Και αυτό διότι με τη χάρη του Θεού το δίκαιο θριαμβεύει και μαζί με αυτό δικαιώνονται και αποκαθίστανται τα ιστορικά εκείνα σημεία που κατέστησαν εμάς τους Κωνσταντινουπολίτες κυνηγημένους για αιώνες. Σήμερα με την ταχύτητα της πληροφορίας οφείλουμε να ανοίξουμε νέους δρόμους και διάβλους επικοινωνίας με την ίδια την κοινή γνώμη, ώστε να αποκατασταθούν οι αδικίες, να αποκτήσουμε δικαιώματα και προστασία και να ταξιδέψουμε την πολίτικη παράδοση και την ιστορία στους αιώνες, απαλήφοντας κάθε σκοτεινή σελίδα που επισκίασε ή ακόμα επισκιάζει την πατρίδα μας. Όμως πρέπει εδώ να τονίσουμε και την ανάγκη υπέρβασης των χωρικών υδάτων και των συνόρων του Έλληνα Ορθοδόξου Χριστιανού και τη στήριξη της Μητρός Εκκλησίας πέρα από το έδαφος της Ελλάδος, διότι το Οικουμενικό Πατριαρχείο είναι εκείνο που συντηρεί τον Ελληνισμό και την Ορθοδοξία έξω από τα σύνορα της Ελλάδος, όχι όμως βάζοντας την πίστη στην κατάψυξη και στα χρονοτούλαπα της ιστορίας, αλλά ζωντανεύοντας όλους τους θεσμούς και δημιουργώντας νέες γενναίες Ελλήνων Ορθοδόξων, αλλά και Ορθοδόξων έξω από εθνικές ταυτότητες, με αποτέλεσμα να διασπείρεται η πίστη, αλλά και τα ήθη και τα έθιμα που συνδέονται άμεσα με αυτήν. Η ελληνορθόδοξη παράδοση γίνεται πλέον παγκόσμια κληρονομιά.
And last question for Father Savvas. The Byzantine Empire influenced many cultures and helped shape Christian Orthodoxy. What are the key qualities, in your opinion, that are still ingrained in our religion and DNA as Constantinopolitans?
Οι κύριες ιδιότητες που χαρακτηρίζουν έναν Κωνσταντινουπολίτη είναι καταρχάς ο κοινός πόνος για την αλωμένη πατρίδα, τις χαμένες ζωές, τα εδάφη, το αίμα, την ιστορία και τον πολιτισμό. Ο πολιτισμός και τα φώτα των Μικρασιατών και δι των Κωνσταντινουπολιτών έλαμψαν στην καρδιά της ταραγμένης Ελλάδος και ενίσχυσαν καταλυτικά το εθνικό ιδεώδες και την ελληνοχριστιανική παράδοση. Οι αγώνες και οι θυσίες των Ελλήνων της πόλης απετέλεσαν πρώτη ύλη για την ανασύσταση όλης της Ελλάδος και για τη δημιουργία μιας μαγιάς που θα γινόταν αργότερα φως πολιτισμού και ευημερίας. Μέσα από συνοχική και αέναη εργασία των απανταχού Κωνσταντινουπολιτών μπορεί να επιτευχθεί η προώθηση των δικαιωμάτων των Κωνσταντινουπολιτών, αλλά και των ομογενών της Ήμβρου και της Τενέδου και απάσης της Μικράς Ασίας και η εφαρμογή των διατάξεων περί προστασίας των μειονοτήτων της Συνθήκης της Λοζάνης, να ενισχυθεί το ανατινηφίλιο ορθόδοξο έργο του Οικουμενικού μας Πατριαρχείου, να διατηρηθεί η γεωπολιτική ισορροπία στην Τουρκία, το Αιγαίο, τα Βαλκάνια και όλη την Ευρώπη και τον κόσμο. Στο αίμα των Κωνσταντινουπολιτών ρέει αίμα πολυπολιτισμικό με βαθιές όμως ελληνικές ρίζες. Η Κωνσταντινούπολη καθ' αυτό υπήρξε λίκνο πολιτισμών, κόμβος εθνών και γενέτειρα ήθους και ελληνοχριστιανικής παράδοσης. Έλαμψε, λάμπει και θα λάμπει φως ανέσπερο στις καρδιές και στην ψυχή μας. Θα αποτελεί πάντα φόρο πολιτισμού και όσοι και αν προσπάθησαν να σβήσουν τη φωτιά που σιγοκαίει, δεν θα καταφέρουν ποτέ να το πετύχουν. Γιατί η ίδια φωτιά καίει μέσα μας όπως έκαιγε στην καρδιά των πατεράδων και των παππούδων μας.
Thank you, Father Savvas. Okay. And last but not least, Mrs. Niki Beales. So I have 3 questions. Growing up in Istanbul, did you feel like you belonged there? Were you ever made to feel like an outsider?
Well, first of all, I did feel I belonged there. My parents were there. My various theas were there. The numerous agiasmata was there. Every Monday, it was the day in the morning that the various relatives will visit the small Agiasma of Agianis, which is at the bottom of our road. Then after that, they will come to our house for coffee. Then in July, it was the feast of Agia Marina, which everybody, children, even neighbors, which they were not Greeks, they will all go there. And then it was Agia Kyriaki, and then it was Agia Paraskevi, and all this surrounding me and my family and my cousins. I was an only child. That was my world, and I thought that I belonged there. Well, time progressed, and one day I was told not to speak Greek. I didn't understand why, but as a good child, I had to obey. A few months later, I was asked not to speak at all. That it was difficult because some people here might know I like talking. The reason was that even as a child, and although I was brought up and grew up there, I had an accent. So it was better not to speak at all. Later, when I went to Zapion, Parthenologeo, I was told the first day I would have to wear my hat, my cap, but the second day I was told not to wear it because it had the letter Zapion, it had the letter Zeta, and then we had to have the hat or cap with us, but it had to be in my school bag. And then slowly and slowly I realized that although it was my place, it was my Vosporos, it was my Therapia, it was my everything, my school, which Kyria Eleni Zarifi years and years had donated to the country, to the town, and my grandmother and my mother went to that school, then I felt all of a sudden that I did not belong there. And that was a very, very sad day for me.
Thank you. What steps do you think are necessary to safeguard the future of the Greek community of Istanbul?
What do I think the future? Well, I get a monthly newspaper which is called Politis, and there I see that some communities, even small communities like the community of Nihori, Geniki, they're doing quite a lot of things, really a lot of things. My neighboring town, village, to Chorio, as we call Therapia, is doing nothing. I don't know where, why, not where. When I ask some friends, the very few friends that I have left there, he told me, "Είμαστε λίγοι," we are very few. So I think that the future will be that those few people to go to the neighboring village, town, Nihori, and tell them, please, if they're already not doing it, invite us as well. And the people, I say Nihori because I know the place, to say to the people of Therapia or Patsiriakas, Büyükdere, whatever they called, "Είστε εκεί, are you there? Come and join us. We're doing a few things." Under the lovely summer, the sky, the sea, the smell of the sea, come here and join us. So this is what the future for the people that they're there should be.
Okay. And last question, when you tell people that you're Greek from Istanbul, what do they say?
Now or before?
Now, before,
Right.
now.
Now,
Oh.
before, when I first came here many, many years ago, when I said that I'm from Istanbul, they didn't think I could be Greek. So I start, when somebody asks me, even my mother-in-law, which could not understand, how could you be Greek if you were born in Istanbul? So after many, many questions, I decided to give her another answer, which I said to her, if your husband went to work in China and then you produced children, what were your children going to be? And she said, oh, English, of course. Then my father had something else, which he said, if a cat goes to a bakery and produces babies, what are the babies are going to be? Are they going to be loaves of bread, or they're going to be kitten? So that is an answer which, although they are looking sometimes thinking what she's talking about, yes, I'm Greek from Istanbul. I'm very pleased and very proud of it.
Thank you, Mrs. Beales. Thank you. Perfect timing. It's not working, but this is open now to the audience.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. There is a free bar. And hope to see you maybe at another event. I did mention the 23rd November.
Before we close, I think we want to ask, I mean, if anyone has questions, I think we
Sorry,
should.
apologies.
It's all right.
Question and answers.
We still have some time, so yes, I want to, let's have some questions now for our guest speakers, please.
Mine is not a question.
Yeah.
I should probably stand up. It's been a great event. Thank you very much for organizing this for each of you. I'm Kurdish from Turkey. So it's just to kind of emphasize and share my feelings. I can definitely emphasize what the Greeks have gone through, or the Constantinopolitans. I just hope that they are made aware, and that the Greeks of the Constantinopolis get stronger, and they protect their values and where they're from. Because as Kurdish, we've been through the same thing, and the sad thing is that we are currently still going through the same thing. When you said that you were told not to speak Greek, well, unfortunately, you still probably can speak your language, which is
definitely.
Which is a great thing. I can't speak my mother tongue. I can only speak the language that was forced onto me, so it is very emotional. And you probably are aware of the recent news that my country is going into war again, and my people are going to die again. So I just wanted to bring awareness that I emphasize. Thank you.
Thank you all the speakers about your fascinating talks. I'd like to address some thoughts of mine and perhaps a question after that to Dr. Stathakopoulos. It is about what you mentioned, or Dr. Christos, Professor Christos mentioned, about our roots as modern Greeks, roots of our identity back to our Byzantine period or the Roman period, and these discrepancies between how we identify this period. And the way we have been taught in our Greek schools about this period, I think is somehow unclear, because although it emphasizes, our education emphasizes and highlights the Byzantine period, at the same time does the opposite that the academics do. Somehow diminishes our Roman roots, because actually it is not either, it is both Greek and Roman period. But because perhaps the books in Greek tend to follow our Christian tradition, they at the same time somehow forget to emphasize the other side of the coin. So, as you as a scholar, how you could respond to that, and how you could give us an idea of how this can work better for the modern education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a very important question, a very important topic, and it could take us hours, but I'll try to be as quick as I can. I think, first of all, what we call the Byzantine Empire, the Byzantines themselves always call themselves Romans, because that's what they were. But, you know, what do we understand under Roman? Since Alexander the Great, the East spoke and wrote Greek the way that the whole world today speaks English. You have your own mother tongue, but if you want to be understood, if you want a text to be read, you have to write it in English. So it was the same with Greek, already long before Rome. And there's a very famous Roman proverb that says, conquered Greece, captured ferocious Rome. So the idea was that although Greece was conquered by the Romans, Greek culture and the Greek language conquered the conquerors. So of course they loved everything Greek. They collected statues. They had their slaves teach Greek to their children. It was if you were a Roman who was somebody, you had to be part of the Greek culture. There was a lot of imitation, and of course also a lot of Greek things were then adapted and became, gave new impetus to Roman ideas. So when Constantine, a Roman emperor, who probably didn't speak Greek because he came from the Latin part of the Balkans, when he refounded this city, Constantinople, it was in a Greek part of the world. People spoke Greek. And so that sort of Greek culture, Greek-speaking culture, if you would like, was what, together with the Roman imperial aspects, Roman law, for example, and a little later with Constantine, Christianity, were fused together. You could not take one out of the other in this equation. And this is what makes what we call the Byzantine civilization, the Byzantine culture, so special. And you are very right, we can't just emphasize one of these three elements, because all these three elements were there together. And the Roman element, which we often underplay because we think it's foreign when it wasn't, it's so important. Roman law meant that there was a written constitution, a written law. I mean, I think especially at this time, in this city, we understand how important it is to have a written law and not traditions. So the written Roman law meant, for example, that contrary to everybody everywhere else in the world, women inherited equally as men, daughters as well as sons. It wasn't like in Western Europe where, the first son inherited everything and everybody else inherited nothing, the Downton Abbey kind of idea. Roman, and thus Byzantine, daughters inherited equally as their brothers. And that was very important because this means that women had property that they could use freely. And when they became widows, which was often the case in these days, they had their property to use and in their own way, in the way that they thought fit. They could protect their children, they could live their lives in an independent way. So that's, just one tiny example of what Roman law can do for you, and it's very, very important. So the three elements, the Roman imperial tradition, Roman law, the Roman way of building cities, of course, the Greek culture, the Greek texts. The Byzantines spoke Greek. They learned how to read and write by reading Homer and the Psalms. So these two traditions fused together, and then of course they wrote for 1,000 years texts in Greek, in sometimes very difficult Greek, I have to say. And then, of course, the Christian civilization, the Christian culture. All these three elements were fused and gave us this very special, very specific mixture of the Byzantine Empire, Byzantine civilization.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Georgia Picky, and I live in Northampton, 18 years now. I am from Cyprus, and I am a refugee. And I can understand everyone that had to be forced to leave their birthplace and to go to another country. I would like to ask about the future of the people that who continue to live in Constantinople, and how is their life now there in Constantinople? If they face difficulties, if there is someone who knows about that.
Yes, we do.
Hi. I know firsthand because I still have relatives there. And as I said before in my opening speech, we are part of the Ecumenical Federation, which they deal a lot with Istanbul, trying to open schools, get back a lot of properties that were taken by successive Turkish governments. However, there's big pressure, and a lot depends on politics, between, pressure on the existing very, very small minority. For example, there are some kinodites where elections are not allowed. There is the Balukli hospital, which you saw, this huge hospital. At the moment, the Turkish government does not allow elections. It's not run by us, meaning the Greek community. Balukli Hospital is a huge asset. It's got something like 600 other assets underneath it, which they get invested. Now the problem is, I'm just giving you a few examples. How can you help this small community? Because the schools have to have students. At the moment, the majority of the children are non-first tongue Greek-speaking children. A lot of them are from Syrio-Chaldei, which they come from southeastern Turkey, Orthodox. So you can imagine first day at school, you have a mixture of children that the mother tongue is not Greek. Somehow you try to assimilate. So these are just the challenges. I'm just giving you a few examples. I don't have an answer. There are some positive signs. One of them is on the island of Imbros. I don't know if you heard it, it's in the news. They've managed to reopen the school. They now have 53 children, some 500 families, or not families, people with their families, have gone back. Now, this is very good news. It will be good if we try somehow, if there is a formula, to get some people back in Istanbul, either Constantinopolitans who have left and their children want to go back, or maybe Greeks who live in mainland Greece and just want to go and start a new life, whatever. Sorry if I haven't been very specific, but there are a lot of problems, yes.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? I'm not sure if it's working.
Yeah,
yes, hello, brilliant. Hello, my name is Constantinopolitan. I'm an international human rights lawyer and a barrister. I do practice in Cyprus and in the UK. I'm very grateful to all the speakers for their very insightful speeches, but I'm mostly grateful to my fellow speakers from the audience, especially the lady that she shared her story from Turkey, and a fellow Cypriot being a refugee. I'm also very grateful from the panel that she shared her story in Constantinople. I felt a very demanded need to share with you, and I do apologize, a poem from Gavafis, which it is very short, but we do, all of us, have a city within us that we always go back to, and that is Polis. Είπες, θα πάγω σ' άλλη γη, θα πάγω σ' άλλη θάλασσα. Μια πόλη σ' άλλη θα βρεθεί καλύτερα από αυτή. Κάθε προσπάθειά μου μία καταδίκη είναι γραφτή. Κι είναι η καρδιά μου σαν νεκρός θα μένει. Ο νους μου πότε μες στον μαρασμό αυτόν θα μένει. Όπου το μάτι μου γυρίσω, ό,τι και να δω, ερείπια μαύρα της ζωής μου βλέπω εδώ, που τόσα χρόνια πέρασα και ρήμαξα και χάλασα. Καινούριους τόπους δεν θα βρεις άλλες θάλασσες. Η πόλη θα σε ακολουθεί. Στους δρόμους θα γυρνάς τους ίδιους και στις γειτονιές τις ίδιες θα γυρνάς. Και μέσα στα ίδια σπίτια αυτά θα σπρίζεις. Πάντα στην πόλη αυτή θα φτάνεις, για τα αλλού μην ελπίζεις. Δεν έχει πλοίο για σε, δεν έχει οδό. Έτσι που τη ζωή σου ρήμαξες εδώ, στην κόγχη τούτη τη μικρή, σ' όλη τη γη την χάλασες. Καβάφης, αέναος, διαχρονικός, όλοι έχουμε μία πόλη μέσα μας και με τα χαράς, I'll be very pleased, especially if you do have a city within you, to explain the poem. I'm grateful to all of you, and I think we do share similar experiences. Thank you very much indeed.
Ένα μεγάλο καλησπέρα από το Hellenic TV. Βρισκόμαστε εδώ στο Hellenic Center και παρευρεθήκαμε σε μια πολύ σημαντική εκδήλωση του Συλλόγου των Κωνσταντινοπολιτών εδώ στο Ηνωμένο Βασίλειο. Έχουμε μαζί μας τον Πάνο Αναγνωστόπουλο. Πάνο, καταρχήν συγχαρητήρια για αυτό το σημαντικό έργο που κάνατε. Είναι σχεδόν ένας χρόνος που δημιουργήθηκε ο Σύλλογος και σήμερα είχατε από ό,τι είδα αρκετό κόσμο.
Ακριβώς. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για τα συγχαρητήρια. Όντως, είμαστε πολύ χαρούμενοι και εγώ και το Διοικητικό Συμβούλιο, γιατί βλέπουμε ότι μέσα σε 11 μήνες, τον Νοέμβριο θα γίνει ένας χρόνος που ιδρυθήκαμε, φτάσαμε στο σημείο που να έχουμε εδώ το χώρο γεμάτο με 85 άτομα, που είναι το limit, ας πούμε, του χώρου εδώ. Το καλό είναι ότι ο κόσμος βλέπουμε ότι ενδιαφέρεται, θέλει να μάθει περισσότερο για την Κωνσταντινούπολη και όπως είδατε και εσείς σήμερα υπήρχε έτσι ωραίες ερωτήσεις, απαντήσεις από το κοινό, που είναι πολύ σημαντικό για να καταλάβει ο κόσμος τι θα πει Κωνσταντινούπολη.
Και υπήρξαν όχι μόνο Κωνσταντινοπολίτες, αλλά και όχι να πω Έλληνες, υπήρξαν και ξένοι και δημιουργήθηκε μια ατμόσφαιρα πάρα πολύ συγκινητική. Είχατε εδώ εθελοντές που μιλήσανε, οι οποίοι ήταν...
Είχαμε, το σχέδιο ήταν οι δύο ομιλητές, κύριοι ομιλητές. Ο ένας που μίλησε θα ήταν ο καθηγητής Χρυσός, ο οποίος δεν μπόρεσε να έρθει λόγω της υγείας του, και ήταν ο Διονύσιος Σταθακόπουλος, ο οποίος έκανε την ομιλία του κυρίου Χρυσού βασικά και διάβασε και μίλησε για την Κωνσταντινούπολη από την αρχή, ας το πω έτσι, της ιστορίας της. Μετά είχαμε τον κύριο δόκτορα Γιώργο Βασιλειάδη, ο οποίος μας ανέπτυξε τα χρόνια μέχρι σήμερα της Κωνσταντινούπολης. Και το τελευταίο ήταν ότι είχαμε δύο πρόσωπα, άμα θέλετε απλά, αν και ο ένας ήταν ιερέας και η άλλη μια κυρία η οποία μένει στο Milton Keynes. Αυτοί είναι Κωνσταντινουπολίτες από την πόλη, οι οποίοι μας ανέπτυξαν πώς αυτοί ζουν, έζησαν και βλέπουν το μέλλον για την Κωνσταντινούπολη. Και αυτό δημιούργησε αρκετές ερωτήσεις και νομίζω αυτοί οι άνθρωποι, όπως είπατε και εσείς, μιλήσαν από την καρδιά τους και αυτό είναι πολύ σημαντικό.
Αισθάνθηκα μεγάλη συγκίνηση πάνω, πρέπει να πω, κυρίως όταν μίλησε η κυρία Niki Beales από το Milton Keynes. Εσύ που έχεις ζήσει επίσης τα ίδια, φαντάζομαι, πώς αισθάνθηκες?
Ακριβώς τα ίδια, διότι και εγώ μικρός, όταν ήμουν στη Χάλκη, παράδειγμα, στα Πριγκιπώνισσα, υπήρχε καιρός, όταν άρχισα να μεγαλώνω, ότι μου λέγανε δεν πρέπει να μιλήσω ελληνικά στον δρόμο. Δεύτερον, όπως είπε και η κυρία, να μην μιλήσω καθόλου, γιατί με το που θα μιλούσα τουρκικά θα κατάλαβαν την προφορά μου. Πολλά τέτοια ήταν όντως γεγονότα που σαν στην ψυχολογία ενός παιδιού, σε εκείνη τη φάση, είναι πολύ αρνητικά όταν μεγαλώνει το παιδί σε τέτοιο περιβάλλον. Και αυτό μας επηρέασε και εμένα και πολλούς άλλους συμμαθητές, φίλες, πολύ αρνητικά. Και ίσως ένας λόγος εγώ που σας είχα πει στην προηγούμενη συνέντευξη που έφυγα από την πόλη και ήθελα να φύγω ήταν αυτός. Αισθάνθηκα σε ένα εχθρικό περιβάλλον.
Ποια είναι η στήριξη που έχετε πίσω από αυτό ή κάποιους που σας στηρίζουν?
Το καλό είναι ότι είμαστε εμείς σαν σύλλογος υπό την αιγίδα της Οικουμενικής Ομοσπονδίας Κωνσταντινουπολιτών που έχει την έδρα της στην Αθήνα και αυτή έχει διάφορους συλλόγους και σωματεία. Σωματεία τα λέμε αυτά που είναι τα σωματεία από την πόλη, από τις περιοχές, αλλά είναι στην Ελλάδα. Για παράδειγμα, η ενορία, ας πούμε, όπως είπε η κυρία Beales για τα θεραπιά ή τον ηχόρη, υπάρχει το αντίστοιχο σωματείο στην Ελλάδα. Λοιπόν, αυτοί όλοι, και είμαστε κάπου 30, μιλάμε μεταξύ μας διαμέσου της Οικουμενικής Ομοσπονδίας. Το καλό με αυτό είναι ότι υπάρχει επικοινωνία γιατί γίνεται, τι είναι τα τελευταία νέα στην πόλη, αν χρειαστεί κάτι, αλληλεγγύη χρειαστεί πολλές φορές. Χρειαζόμαστε τελευταία στιγμή κάποια υποτροφία ή κάποιο παιδί από την πόλη ή κάπου να πάει σε κανένα νοσοκομείο. Αυτό όλο το οργανώνει η Οικουμενική Ομοσπονδία που έχει ένα παράρτημα για την αλληλεγγύη, να το πω έτσι. Και είναι πολύ σημαντικό.
Πάρα πολύ. Και πριν σε αφήσω να πας για το ποτό και να μπορέσεις να μιλήσεις με τους υπόλοιπους, να μας πεις για την επόμενη εκδήλωση.
Η επόμενη μας εκδήλωση θα είναι η Χριστουγεννιάτικη. Θέλουμε να το συνδυάσουμε και με την ετήσια συνέλευσή μας που πρέπει να κάνουμε μια φορά το χρόνο. Άρα αυτό που θα κάνουμε τη συνέλευση εμείς τα μέλη και μετά θα καλέσουμε όλους τους φίλους και εννοείται τα μέλη να έρθουν στο χριστουγεννιάτικο πάρτι 23 Νοεμβρίου Σάββατο στο Wembley Hilton. Καλό θα είναι όποιος ενδιαφέρεται να στείλει ένα email ούτως ώστε να το βάλουμε στο database για να τους ενημερώνουμε το τι κάνουμε και πότε θα γίνει και τις λεπτομέρειες.
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ Πάνο και καλή συνέχεια, καλή δύναμη για αυτό το σημαντικό έργο.
Και ευχαριστώ το Hellenic TV που ήσασταν εδώ. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ.
Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Ζητάμε τη στήριξη για αυτό τον υπέροχο σκοπό των Κωνσταντινοπολιτών εδώ στο Ηνωμένο Βασίλειο και στην Κωνσταντινούπολη.